Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode on Life on the Edge. In this month's episode, we look at conditional access, and I talk to Sven Jansen, who's the head of pre-sales for deviceTrust. He gives a bit on his own background and that of deviceTrust, and then we talk about how conditional access can help with your current hybrid working solutions. And also we look at a brand new feature coming to IGEL, which is conditional access for Azure Active Directory. And Sven even gives us a demo of that. So I really hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks very much. Enjoy. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Life on the Edge. This month, we're talking to deviceTrust, and I have their head of pre-sales, Sven Jansen. Hey, Sven, how are you?
Hey, James, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm very well. So, Sven, would you like to start with a bit of an introduction to yourself and how you came to be working at deviceTrust?
Might do. Thanks. Well, first, thanks for having me on your podcast.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Really looking forward to today. My history is kind of EUC heavy. So I've worked as an administrator with Citrix for a while before I joined a company called Sepago in Germany for 10 years as a professional services consultant. Did quite a lot of virtual apps and desktops integrations, worked with what used to be NetScaler, now ADC, for quite a while.
And still NetScaler. I'm never calling it ADC. Never. I can't do it. It's just no. I'm sorry. It's a bit like ShareFile being called content collab. See, I can't even say it. Content collaboration. It's ShareFile.
Isn't it Citrix Files now?
Isn't it Citrix Files? Even worse. Yeah, no, I'm sticking with ShareFile.
Yeah, it's not the best renaming if you ask me, because especially Googling it does not really work. So yeah, let's stick to NetScaler.
Yes, exactly.
NetScaler works.
Yes.
Yeah, did that for a while, and then did some lighthouse programs for what used to be WVD, now it's AVD.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was heavily UC concentrated. And then when you're doing some projects, I learned about deviceTrust, and I learned about the tool, and I learned about the intent and what it was designed for, what it is designed for. And I kind of liked it. So I took the architect training from deviceTrust. And then I learned that the product is actually really well designed, and that it's it's a smart, small company that sounds like a good place to be. And I kind of reached out to them and said, well, if you need someone someday, I might be someone to speak to if you like so. And then after a while, they just did. So they just called up and said, hey, well, we were talking one day and we might now look into, growing. And then we talked, and now I'm here. So now I'm working with deviceTrust it's already almost 2 years. So they hired me when COVID was happening.
Same here. I joined IGEL on March 23rd, 2020.
Okay.
So,
yeah, well,
yeah,
it's an interesting time to start a job, really, but especially in tech, I think it was not that hard, because at least I am used to working remotely for a while now.
Yeah.
Everyone else is, and if you kind of make sure to meet people once in a while, then things are good. So that was quite easy. And well, I'm quite happy that now for a few months, actual in-person things can happen regularly again. And it might stop. It might stop again. It might continue like it is, but I'm quite happy that we get to see each other, more frequently. That we can participate in, events like IGEL Disrupt and all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we got to meet at E2E, which was in Berlin in June. So
that's great.
Obviously that's a great community event, and it's really good to see things like that back. And it was my first one in since COVID as well, so it was great to be there, and a really good event. And we'll get to it later, but some really interesting stuff between deviceTrust and IGEL. So maybe just if you give us a bit of an overview of deviceTrust and where they kind of sit within the EUC space, I think that'd be really helpful.
We'll try to. So what deviceTrust does. My role at deviceTrust is a pre-sales role, so I'm kind of gluing together the customers, the partners, and deviceTrust. So I'm kind of technical. I'm not a developer, but I have a technical understanding. What deviceTrust does is we care about the context of access to digital workspaces. And digital workspace we define as an environment, whatever it is, where a user accesses applications, resources, desktops, however you design it, really. But we feel that authentication as it exists, and there's a good point for authentication to exist, might not be enough in all cases. So we've seen the environment, the work as it is designed, develop over the years. Back in the days, as we always say, there was the company where people went to, they opened the door, they sat next to the computer, they were working there, and the role-based model was very fine in those situations. But I think it's not a new information that this does not really exist anymore. There are still companies who kind of cling to that idea, and Elon told us all that he's kind of a friend of the idea.
I think the less said about Elon, the better at the moment. But yeah, no, there is companies I've heard of crazy stuff recently. Like people are going in to sit on Teams and Zooms meetings, and it just seems, what is the absolute point of that? It's just bums on seats, to use a term. It's just not how people want to work. And I get what you're saying about people want to work. Like, it's such a cliche term, but it's so true. They want to work from anywhere, and they don't care where it is. They just want to have a device and be able to access it. And then obviously from an IT perspective, that is a massive challenge for people to be able to work anywhere. And there's so many kind of issues that have to be resolved, but you want that to be seamless for the user.
Well, that's true. Companies like Citrix, for example, they have been promoting work from anywhere for a very long time.
My entire career, yes.
Yeah. And if you look at the same person working from home with the designated equipment the user has, or if the user goes to some internet cafe in Thailand, for example, then things will look quite different from a access perspective for that user. So the one thing you can do is either strip everything down and pull restrict everything basically for that user all the time. Or you could, take into consideration where the user is, what device the user is using, so the contextual information, as we call it, and then allow the user whatever the user needs to be allowed to in the secure environment, and then just strip the rights down in the not secure environment. And this way you can make sure that everything is quite secure in the digital workspace. And as well, the user experience is good when the user is using the protected, devices and sources and whatever. And that's kind of the idea behind it. So we say that the more information you have about your environment, the more you can, specify which rights, which access rights will be required in the environment, and which sources the user needs access to.
Okay, that's a good idea. So I know kind of what you're saying about, different settings for different locations and access, etc. So I suppose it comes to this whole term, which we see more and more around conditional access. So can you explain that in a bit more detail about what conditional access is?
Well, I can speak about our idea.
Yes,
of in
a deviceTrust sense of what conditional access is, obviously.
Because what we see with our integration into Azure Conditional Access is that terms get mixed up, right? So company one talks about the one function in another way than company two does. We speak about zero trust in some way, some others speak about zero trust in another way as well. So our idea of conditional access is basically that you have some resource, may it be a desktop, may it be an application that is hosted somewhere. Traditionally, especially if we look into the situation where IGEL as a client comes into place, it will be some kind of remoting mechanism that sits behind that. Citrix, VMware, Microsoft AVD, and all those remoting things. And you might want to control access to those environments based on some information. A very easy use case, if we're working together with IGEL, for example, is just checking if the IGEL that is accessing the whole thing is actually your IGEL. Because you can secure your environment, but if someone finds an IGEL somewhere, or gets that UID pocket, then this person might be able to access your environment if you do not have a certain check. So what we can do is we can evaluate some information. Is it your IGEL? What's the location of the IGEL? Is it configured the way you want it configured? And if not, you can just prevent access to a host pool on AVD to your desktop in some kind. Okay. That's our idea of conditional access.
No, that makes sense. And I think that's the kind of thing we're seeing more and more in different scenarios, that you do, if you're in, say, something like an internet cafe, just in Starbucks or some sort of cafe, you don't want to be able to access maybe your corporate drives, but you can access your email or something, So I think we are definitely seeing scenarios, and it has to be flexible and seamless as well. It can't be complicated, because obviously we're seeing, as I'm sure you're perfectly aware, the term DEX is getting thrown around a lot more, digital experience. And companies are even starting to measure that kind of digital experience. We do need security, but at the same, it can't be an impediment to people working. They still have to be able to access their items. I get that.
That is true.
Sense. Yeah,
that is true.
It's about making it simple, but in the background, not necessarily. From an end user perspective, it has to be pretty simple. But obviously, there's complexity involved in it as well. So
that is true.
Yeah.
You know what? There are different approaches to the conditional access thing, and we differ a bit in how we do it. You just said that it needs to be seamless. So what we do is we always check for your whole context all the time. So we do not have like a perimeter where you log on, and if everything is fine, you can log on, and then you get your resources, and what happens next doesn't really matter. But it's more like we continuously evaluate your contextual information. So if you're working from that one IGEL into your Citrix environment, for example, and you get all your applications, and you take that IGEL somewhere, the location changes, for example, then we can continuously evaluate that information and then design the workspace as it needs to be, like close applications, prevent access to applications, maybe even map printers or whatever we can do. So this is not only about conditional access, this is also about application management and configuration of your digital workspace. So the idea behind all we do is continuously evaluating the contextual information and then controlling access to desktops, applications, and the resources you use, whatever that means.
Yeah, and as you said, as we've said numerous times, people are working everywhere, so you do need to be constantly checking the context of where people are at a particular location. So that makes total sense. Really? And as a solution, that's what you want. You don't want something to be static and have the same condition applied across the board, because I pick up, I've numerous other devices. I will walk into the house or walk out, or switch no one is fixed to one device or one location, or very rarely. So that makes total sense.
You know how deviceTrust was initially founded on the idea that our founder was sitting in his house, and he has like multi-level house, usual small multi-level house, and he was sitting in the basement, and there's a printer, and he wanted to have this printer when he works from the basement, and then he wanted to go to the first level, and he wanted to have this first level printer when he was there without configuring something. And this is how deviceTrust was founded, on that idea, knowing where you are, knowing what happens with your device, and then controlling something based on that. That was the basic idea back in the days.
That's cool. It's such a basic principle, but yet when you implement something like that, you then see the possibilities of what you can do with context-based awareness. Yeah, that's oh, wow. You really wanted that printer.
He really wanted the printer, and that's actually one use case for many customers buying deviceTrust to do kind of, follow me printing, similar idea, because we can get the location information in many ways, the client name of the user or the access point that the user is connected to or whatever, and then manage the printers for that user based on that information. Without having, the overhead of a flexible printing technology. And then we also can do, conditional access and all this on top of that.
Sure. No, that makes sense. And as we know, we do need these different levels of security, because as we know, the one thing we've seen with this massive surge in remote working is a massive surge in ransomware and all of this kind of stuff.
That's true.
And that's why I suppose our messaging is that you keep your endpoints simple and you put the complexity of Windows in the cloud, so then your attack surface is reduced. And then obviously if you add in deviceTrust, you're even more secure again. So that's why we have been working together. So moving on a little bit, in terms of what we've been working on some pretty interesting stuff. So do you want to give kind of an overview of the what we've been doing around Azure Active Directory?
Of course. So the idea behind deviceTrust has always been a part of the IGEL OS, and you can always use IGEL as a client in a deviceTrust controlled environment. So that has been there forever and for ages, and we're working together quite closely for a while. But the idea behind that new integration is that, you might not only have environments like Citrix or AVD that you work in, that you control access in, but you might also use something like Azure-based applications, Office 365, Teams, and all those applications that are based or controlled by Azure Active Directory.
Absolutely. Who isn't using Office 365 these days? So,
and there are different approaches, I would say, to the client of the future. IGEL is now working on those laptops where you have the operating system on, and you can just spin them up and you can do, you connect to your remote session and all this. But you might also open SaaS applications right from that IGEL system, right? Sure. And then if you are using applications that are Azure-based, so Office 365 as an example here, what you will do is you will just pop up a website and then you will type in your user information and all this. And that is fine as it is. But if you now want to add conditional access to the game, and if you want to control, the Office or the Azure-based applications based on conditional access, that won't work. You won't be able to do that from your IGEL because the IGEL can't be integrated into Azure AD. So in that case, without our integration, our joint integration, you will not really be able to use those Office applications from your IGEL. And that's where we worked on together for the last months.
Okay, and I think you have a demo of this.
I do, and I will jump on the demo now.
Cool.
So, where's my workstation? Here it is. There you go.
Yes, we can see that.
So I've prepared a few IGELs here. So this is just a virtual IGEL virtual environment here. I have some IGEL VMs running inside that environment. And what I first want to show is just a basic, local login on my IGEL machine. What I'm going to do here now is I just will pop up my browser and just give you an idea of how, using Office 365 applications, in that case, it's just office.com, will look if your IGEL is as it is for now. You would just head over to office.com, try to use Office locally. If you click sign in here, you will be prompted to type in your username. You will be prompted to type in your password. So you basically get the just pass through less, nothing nothing automatic integration, kind of. That's just how it works, right?
Yeah.
What we worked on together with IGEL now is bringing those IGEL clients into Azure Active Directory, which means, Azure Active Directory supports Windows as a client, it supports Linux as a client. They support it with a different feature of a different feature set.
Yep.
And what we worked on together is just bringing those IGEL clients into Azure Active Directory with the full feature set it offers. That means I get my IGEL here now, and I get a logon that is now not local, but it's already tied to Azure Active Directory. So if I now log on as a user here, and I type some password that is wrong, then I will already get an error from Azure Active Directory saying, hey, well, that's my user, but the password is wrong. And if I use the correct password, if I use the correct password, that looks better, then I will be logged into my IGEL locally as my Azure Active Directory user. And that now gives us the power to, just spin up a browser using pass-through authentication. So the user actually gets authenticated to my browser locally without having to type in something. And if I now move over to office.com, I will get to sign in. Now, what we will see is that this sign-in will be controlled by Azure Conditional Access. That machine is now a member of the Azure Active Directory, but it's not compliant. You can set the compliant information in Azure Active Directory. And because this machine is not compliant, we won't get access.
Right.
Shifting over to the next IGEL, which is compliant, still have to log on. And what we're going to see here now is that my user can, again, pop up the browser, the credentials are passed through, and the user will be able to log on to Office 365 without typing in something, because it's just local pass-through. Conditional access does apply, but it will allow the client in because deviceTrust sent the information, hey, this device is compliant to Azure Active Directory, and we can now access that SaaS application without doing anything. And that does two things from our perspective. It first hires your security, because you get all the IGEL clients into Azure Active Directory, and you can check if these are really your IGELs. You can apply all your conditional access policies. But the same way, it enriches your user experience, because the user doesn't need to type in something. He's already logged on locally to the IGEL with Azure Active Directory credentials. You don't need to have the AD integration locally or something. So this is a full-blown Azure Active Directory client here now.
Very good. Excellent. That is impressive.
I will go ahead and open the Azure portal in the background, just to give you an idea of how that looks. Give me a quick second there, please. Just to show you that the IGELs are really members of the Azure Active Directory, and I'm not, tricking you. Just preparing that. Here we go. Resume. So what you should see now is just my Azure portal. And the two IGEL machines that are member of the Azure Active Directory. So these machines are really proper members of Azure Active Directory. You see the first one doesn't have a compliant state. The second one is marked compliant, yes. And this is the reason why, in the end, Azure Conditional Access would allow access to the Office 365 application. We can set the compliant state first, and this is how it's integrated into the system that we worked on together, based on the information, if this is your IGEL, if it's the IGEL managed by the UMS. And we can, of course, add all the context information to the game. that you might want to define, like location and all the information. So that's what we worked on together and what we are in the process of releasing very soon.
No, that's really good, and I think, as you said, it's great from a security perspective, but it's also great from a user experience perspective. And obviously, what we're seeing more and more is people are using SaaS applications, so that really makes sense. So changing a little bit, what's your kind of take on the biggest thing you're kind of seeing in EUC at the moment?
The biggest thing, that's a question that's hard to answer, and I've thought about this for a while.
Sorry, let me rephrase that. What's the thing in aside from deviceTrust, obviously, what's the thing in EUC that excites you the most at the moment? Put it that way instead.
I would say things becoming more easy.
Yeah.
So if I remember back when I started as an administrator working with Citrix products, you had to implement all this stuff in your environment. Installation was complex and all this, and this got better and better over time. It still is quite old-fashioned if I look at the German market, but if I look into the international market, especially the US market, we see our customers just spinning up tens of thousands of desktops somewhere, on AWS, on AVD, wherever it is, in a moment. I know it's all cloud-based and it's all, costs are high and all this. So these are all details, but the ease of things becomes better and better, so to say. So you're getting your resources much more easy. And I've thought about your question was, what you wrote down was kind of desktops or VDIs and how this works. And we've seen people promoting VDI will be the future and all this for years and years now. Every year was the year of VDI.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if this is true, and nothing will be true for everyone, right? But what we see is a massive rise in consumerization of desktops, especially of the basic workload desktops that can just be pulled from somewhere.
Yeah.
And the clients in that situation will be more and more simple, so to say, right? So I think in a basic workload environment, we would see more and more clients that are tied down to basically just being the client. And that's your story, the IGEL story, really, because there's nothing more easy than having a client that you do not really need to manage, besides getting the most recent firmware on, configuring to be tied to your environment, and then accessing the workspace that's somewhere else. And the simplicity of things is, for me, it's the most exciting development that I see.
I get what you're saying. It's definitely the scale, how quickly we can, and we have a whole simplicity message as well, and we're, with our next release of OS 12, we are increasing that simplicity. And you will see things, things like our onboarding will be way simpler for devices. And I think that's a big play across the board, because there's been for too long too much complexity.
True.
And it's like, as you said, spinning up desktops and all that used to be such a pain, but now it's just being simplified down to just click a button and away it goes. And it's definitely heading in the right direction. And obviously the simplicity has to be there from both an admin and an end user perspective, and it's getting that balance right, I think, is the kind of key factor for me.
Well, we have all seen where complexity leads, right? With ransomware being on a massive rise for quite a while now, and all this, we see that managing complex IT infrastructures in special, user user devices and user infrastructure
Mm.
is a problem. And the more you can reduce attack surfaces on the user side, the more you will make your infrastructure secure. And if this is something you can do with ease, with easy to manage systems,
Yeah.
the more you will easily raise your security as well. And an OS or an ecosystem like IGEL will definitely benefit to that.
Agreed. Okay, well, Sven, that has been really useful. I've really enjoyed that, and I think we're ourselves and deviceTrust we're doing some really good work together, and there's obviously more to come. OS 12 is due for release later in the year, so well, obviously these features will be available then, and so yeah, I'd really like to thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure. So thanks very much.
Thank you, James. It was a pleasure.
Register for our Disrupt on Tour autumn events at www.disrupteuc.com.